of the piece, or
Yes, it
just
is.
of the piece?
Yeah.
Welcome, councillors. Welcome, members of the public. We will now come to order. And just a reminder at the point, in case anybody needs reminding, that we are on live stream TV. If you pick your nose, somebody might see you. So just think about that. If you want to go back and look at yourself afterwards, you go to the council's YouTube site and there it will be. Just a reminder about health and safety. The emergency exits are the door you came in and the exit behind me. If we do need to evacuate the building, use one of the exits, assemble outside by the playground, which is in that direction, and please remain at the assembly area until the building has been declared clear. And at this point, I will invite the Deputy Mayor to welcome us with a country.
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu, e moana, e huarahi mā tātou ai te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ai a te tātou katoa.
Thank you. Do we have any conflicts of interest? We have none. Do we have any apologies? We have none. Do we have any acknowledgements or tributes?
I have one, Your Worship, yeah. So I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of Brian Love in Featherston late last year and acknowledge his contribution to the Featherston community through St. John's and Red Cross. So just as a mark of respect, thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question. When we have an acknowledgement, will we send a note on behalf of the council to the appropriate people to say that we have acknowledged someone?
I don't think we do, but it would be nice if we could, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, to Barbara, that's Brian's wife.
Thank you very much. So now we come to the public participation part of the morning, where people can come in and talk for 5 minutes to us, express their views. And we're going to start with Helen Smith from Martinborough. She and her family have been here for 5 years. Helen was a full-time mother of 2 young people. And the thing she loves most about Martinborough is just that community vibe that you get when you live here. So Helen, as I said to you before, the next 5 minutes are yours, but we do suggest talk for slightly less. I think somebody wants to ask a question, so over to you.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm standing up for Mary Byrne. She's a founding member of Fluoride Free New Zealand since 1999. And while I don't have the same experience and knowledge as Mary, I come here as a concerned resident of Martinborough in the South Wairarapa. I am here to address a Fluoridation Drinking Water Amendment Act of 2021. I'm here to ask you, my council, to stand up and push back the central government dictate. I know it's a big ask, it's a really big ask. That's what I'm here to ask. We have elected you to be our voices, to represent us, to advocate for the people of this community and not central government. Did you watch the videos that Mary sent? Did you have a chance to do that? Yeah. If you did, you will understand a little bit of the background of fluoridation. You will know that the fluoridation chemicals used come from a byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer industry. And they're laced with heavy metals, toxic to all bodies. You will also know that the science is most definitely not settled, as the government and their media will have us believe. Fluoridation is not safe for anyone, it doesn't work, and it's unethical. Fluoridation is actually shown to cause harm According to the second draft report of the US National Toxicology Program released in October 2022, fluoride is presumed to be a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard to humans. The NTP found in 13 high-quality studies neurotoxic effects at fluoride levels less than 0.7 parts per million. New Zealand currently doses at 0.85 parts per million, higher than anywhere else in the world. And there's actually only a handful of countries that do actually fluoridate their water systems. Where are our margins of safety? How much is too much? It is easy to exceed the upper limits depending on a person's individual consumption and dietary habits. For instance, a baby being bottle fed. New Zealand Supreme Court ruled in 2018 that fluoridation was a compulsory medical treatment. There is no escaping it once it's now public water supply. So no filters are going to do the job, water filters. You might be able to get a little bit, but actually we go out, drink coffee, we eat out, we're going to find it everywhere in our environment. Fetuses and bottle-fed babies receive a huge dose of fluoride. The best studies in the world have found this causes lowered IQ. What is this council going to do to protect these vulnerable people and these vulnerable groups? Fluoride's claimed benefits are from topical contact with teeth. Ingesting fluoride has a negative impact on health, involves many more tissues than just teeth, because that's actually how our bodies work. They don't isolate and just go straight to teeth. Everywhere in our bodies. We know that many New Zealand children are already receiving a toxic dose. At least 30% of children in fluoridated areas have some form of dental fluorosis. This is a discoloration of the teeth, sort of brown spots, white spots. And this is the first sign of fluoride poisoning. And to me, 30% of children is a huge amount of children. It's enormous. Now, do you remember when lead and petrol was considered safe? DDT, cigarettes, wasn't that long ago, and the government supported these, didn't they? Yeah. Is the Ministry of Health not just burying their heads in the sand and cherry picking the data to support their stance? Fluoridation doesn't work. Did you know that there is no statistical difference in tooth decay in non-fluoridated and fluoridated populations? Statistics have been used to promote and defend fluoridation. I've got a handout here that I'd really like you to read that I'll pass out. And it's by the Auckland Principal Dental Officer, why I changed my mind about water fluoridation. That's got a lot more details. And fluoridation is unethical. Fluoridation robs us of choice. It is a form of mass medication. This is a violation of our medical ethics, as the medicine is forcibly given without consent. Fluoridation is a huge imposition on people that don't want it. Compare this to the people who do want it. They can just brush their teeth with fluoride toothpaste and it makes no difference to them, whether it's in the water or not. Fluoridation promoters argue that fluoridation ensures that fluoride gets to those who need it most. What they're actually saying is if we don't have fluoridation, we have no way of forcing fluoride.
Thank you, Alex. So that is your 5 minutes.
Okay.
So we appreciate that you've come along. What I'll do is I'll ask Councillor Olds to take half the pile and send them down that way, and we'll move the other half down the other way. Thank you. Just in preparation, I'm going to do something slightly unusual. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive for comment.
First of all, we do not fluoridate our water. The original bill allowed the Director General of Health to require councils to put in place fluoridation. And we've had 2 letters from the Director of Health, Dr. Bloomfield, the first stating that we were not amongst the original councils to be asked to fluoridate. The subsequent letter also advising us that we're not in the second tranche. And so at the amendment bill itself, as I understand it, is to remove the power from the Director General, but make it to the responsibility of the DHBs. So it's not a fundamental rewrite of the requirement to fluoridate. It's about who provides the direction in terms of the requirement to fluoridate. The priority is for, and the way the Director General of Health prioritises the legal requirement is by those communities that have a high presence of tooth decay or septicemia or diseases caused by basically dental issues. So that just to give you a sense of what the legal context is.
Good. Thank you for that summary. Are there any questions from? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Helen. And
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
most
very
welcome
much.
to speak. And thank you for coming along.
Okay,
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, well done.
Now, is Warren, he is now. Normally I would introduce somebody coming to speak to us, but I think Warren, you well enough know that that may not be necessary. So please take a seat.
I sent this to councillors last night, but for some reason it was blocked from your account. Your account as well.
Yeah, a lot
It may have,
a lot of stuff's been blocked actually, right?
Wasn't blocked from mine, Warren.
so does anyone
Yeah,
see the
thank
copy?
you.
I'll have a copy of this. Thank you.
Blocked from mine.
All right.
Oh,
Do you have a stand?
sorry, that should be the only thing that is there.
Now, I will just have a slight interruption before you begin. A public forum is an opportunity for people to come along and express their views. It is not an opportunity to come along and ask questions. So what I will ask you to do is to avoid asking any of us a question, because I'm not going to admit that. But we do want to hear from you. So,
It's all
The time is
questions,
yours.
it's all pretty much questions.
well, since they're all written down and we can read them, is there anything you wish to add to them?
No,
Okay. Are there any questions from councillors?
Yeah, all
So you-
questions, that's because it's not getting.
Your worship, we'll get an opportunity during after public participation to have a discussion on some of the stuff that was presented to us, and I take it that was your action.
Councillor Dana?
Oh, no, it is, it's just a little bit difficult because of course the public hasn't got the paper that to understand where any, there's no background, I guess, so because I look at this and I can see that the majority of it is questions, so that makes it quite difficult for you to be able to present. Yeah, sorry about that, Warren.
well,
Can I just make a comment?
Yes,
If
please.
I may, Warren, you're an elected member on the Greytown Community Board.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering in your letter to councillors this morning, whether or not you'd had the opportunity to actually discuss this with your board to any depth, so that something would come from the board back to a formal council meeting.
no, and this is a ratepayer, I'm concerned.
Okay,
Right, with the board.
yeah, and
The
that's
board obviously has their own opinion, I guess.
sure. Yeah. No, I was just thinking about the process in terms of raising these at community boards so that they can actually be brought back to council for a better understanding. Yeah.
There's actually just a further what councillor Olds was saying, there's actually a space there as well, and where members from each of the boards can actually come and present. And so if it was to go through, because I can see that this is, concerns with regards to the Greytown community, if there was the feedback there, what would be great is to, once you have that from the Greytown Community Board, you could actually present to it and have a little bit more time as well. So that would actually, just for future reference, I mean, I know it doesn't really help today, but that would be fantastic, and actually give you a little bit, a little bit more scope. We could actually really get into discussion rather than just 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Splendid.
Councillor Phillips.
Good morning, Warren. Certainly some of those topics that you've raised are of note, and there's someone that I've been involved with, so perhaps after the meeting, I can share with you some of the detail that and the information that's been passed to me. So we could have a discussion about that a bit later on.
Thank you.
And share thoughts and exchange ideas perhaps.
And just.
Yeah. But,
Oh, no, I-
sorry, do you wish, I know.
Thank you, Mayor. I haven't seen that email, so I don't have context of what the questions are, but I wonder if potentially they could be appointment, local government official information questions, because that's the usual mechanism to get information. You've got a question.
There's certainly no barrier to providing the answers. I believe
Absolutely.
from my glance that most of the answers are in fact readily available and have been published in the past, so there will be no problem there. It's just that this is not a question and answer session. So, okay, look, thank you very much.
Thanks, Warren.
That brings us to our third guest, Gary Bittner from Featherston, I believe.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I have not had quite enough time to be able to introduce you fully.
That's okay.
Normally we get a little long.
I'm a ratepayer, that's all.
Oh, you're perfect.
I'm going to stand because I know it's hard to hear back there when people sit.
Yeah,
You sit, and thank you for accepting me to come and speak. I did only get notice though, 10 minutes before 9:30 today, but anyway, you have technology in front of you. Do you use it? The question I raise is, we live with transparency. We're supposed to be living with transparency, honesty, integrity. We were given a graph to the ratepayers. The technology says 18 plus 1.5 equals 19. That should confuse people. We get next sent to us the setting of rates. I have to question who set the rates, but the setting of rates has figures in them. I put the figures that are in that, the summary figures, on a page, which I will now move to the people to hand out. And there's some in the box there if you guys want to grab them. But you'll note that I never added up those figures in that setting of rates, because the setting of rates figures comes to about 24.4 million. Our chief executive told us that he needed 21.3 million this year. Do you know 3 times 7 equals 21? Do we all know that? You have 7,117 ratepayers to pay the 21.3 million. That brings it back to $2,998 each ratepayer. Is our technology failing us? Or what is it?
Please avoid asking
Now,
questions.
it's not, it's 1718. You had an income 18.87 million. To clarify, it's not the South Wairarapa, it is including Wellington Regional, but the houses at that date to today, we have 303 houses less right now this year under the Freedom of Information request, which I had from the council. There is a very serious problem that people will not communicate, help each other, and within council, unintentionally, they're putting each other against each other. And I don't like that one little bit. I'm not here to attack the people that put the figures out. I'm here for us to get change to the system. This is pretty serious stuff. It's dishonesty. Now, if you want to believe where I come from, when you tell public their income, you tell them the true truth of the council's income. plus the government's input. I could go further, but I'm not going to go any further. I will be coming back next month because I will expect full council correction of all the figures, and then I'll raise the next lot of serious issues after that. I'm not going to expose them right now because they're obviously invisible to them, but I'm going to keep them for myself. I think we need the system to go back and clarify all freedom of information figures that I've been given, verify whether they're correct or incorrect. It doesn't matter if they're incorrect. We're not worried about it. We just want to get to the very bottom truth without accusing each other. Thank you very much for speaking.
Excuse me, Gary, if you just mind spinning, I can see that at least one councillor have a follow-up question, and that's what we normally do. Are you okay with that? One thing I can just explicitly say to you is that that the elected members that you see in front of you are solely responsible for setting the rates. There is nobody else who has the legal power to set the rates in this district except those who you have elected, along with the other voters. When it comes to communication to you, again, that is the responsibility of the council. So just wanted to make that.
I actually.
And you did know that? Excellent. Oh, brilliant. So, Councillor Eels.
Thanks, Your Worship. And thanks, Gary, for coming along to speak this morning. I know over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of concern within our wider the whole South Wairarapa district community about the setting of the rates. I'd like to let you know and assure you and the rest of the community that the council, all the councillors are doing workshops at the moment to understand and learn that process on how to set the rates so that we don't have any mistakes or any repeats of what happened 2 years ago. So we are in a process. It's a new process for a lot of us because there are a lot of new councillors around the table, but we certainly don't want to be having a repeat of what happened previously. And we want to be able to, once we get that information, then to communicate it with.
I appreciate what you're saying, but where I come from, my world, if you say something and it's wrong, it's not a problem, but we should always rectify it. If it's a public paper, it should be rectified publicly. That's where I stand. I do know where the problems come from inside the council. It's not individuals, it's the structure of how they've set up the recording and past history and future history. They can't, of all the people I went to, the backs go up, but it's not their backs, it's because they can't access anything. So that's an issue that needs seriously changing.
Just check if there's any other councillor that has. So very much for coming along, Gary. Appreciate that. And if you could give us a little more warning next month, because you've said you're going to come back, if we can arrange.
I rang on Tuesday, but
okay,
that's
right.
Come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so we come to item A6 on the agenda, which is to do with actions from public participation. And welcome back, Wilson, thank you. Councillors, Councillor Old.
Yes, so Your Worship, thanks for that. I just, I guess, want to spark a little bit of conversation around Warren's email that was sent out, and even though he couldn't speak to it because it was very much related to questions, I'd certainly like to see some answers in relation to his questions, perhaps from the Chief Executive at some stage. And rather than go into the debate around it today, that would be my preferred method. Yeah.
I just think for the public record, it would be really good. The public haven't seen these questions. I think you raised that. It would be really good if it was lodged as a requirement, and then we could have that process really clearly. That would be my preference for process and transparency.
May I just, so how long would that take, Amanda?
20 working days.
20 working days. So in effect, if he's already sent out, and if he's already sent out, the questions he's asked can just be forwarded?
Yep.
Directly? Yep. We can, so that way then it's lodged as a Lagoima, then it can come back, so everyone will have the information prior to the next meeting. With that, Warren, sorry, is that okay?
Well, yes, the quick question,
So that would-
questions do need to be asked through the chair. There is a fundamentally different approach being suggested by councillor Olds versus you, so we may have to decide on that. Certainly, I think one of the advantages, I mean, irrespective of what happens, Mr. Woodger's questions now become part of our minutes, so they will be publicly available very, very quickly. And certainly either councillors or your suggestions are live possibilities. So it's just a question of which way we wish to go. I think yes.
So, Your Worship, I mean, we could discuss those in this meeting, those questions that were raised. We could discuss those and ask officers to provide us with answers. However, the answers may not be readily available at this particular point in time. I guess my concern with the Lagoima request is that 20 working days is 20 working days. It's good, nice to have these answers in a lot quicker time frame. And often these things disappear below the radar. I'm sure with Warren's email, it won't happen in this case because he would bring it to the fore as he's already done that. So I guess I think. Yeah.
Do you mind if I consult the chief executive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just get his thoughts.
Yes, I mean, there are a number of, so the Lagoima is information we hold. And so, and some of the questions require a commentary rather than analysis. I think the better process is to provide a report. Yeah.
Rather than Lagoima.
Yeah, than Lagoima. Oh, sorry, Amanda, but.
I don't know the questions are, so I can't comment.
Yes, I've only just seen these questions myself.
But how long would the report take, Harry? And can we expect it before the next council meeting? So
Yes,
that way.
yes.
Okay.
That's really small.
That's what I want, yeah.
So, councillor Rolls, could I suggest you word a recommendation?
Yeah, so the chief executive officer to respond to questions raised by Mr. Woodger and a response, a written response to councillors prior to next council meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Are you seconding it?
No.
Do we have a second?
They could probably go as an action item, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than a formal resolution.
Nevertheless, it's been moved and seconded. Any other comments, questions?
Sorry, Your Worship, it's a side issue, but I'm not sure the public can actually, the public hear? Can you hear us? No, that's a bit of an issue.
Yes, well, the room is what it is. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Yeah, I think short of a little more technology, which Gary might not approve of, we have to live with what we've got to live with, but we'll all try to be a little more.
So kia ora, everybody. Just discussed that we would get together the joys of being an ex-town crier. So we were just saying that we could a report will be put together to answer the questions raised by Warren Woodger. So that way that will be coming back to councillors prior to the next meeting and a response to Warren.
Thank you to our town crier.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Right. Are there any other comments?
So is that was a motion?
That was a motion.
Yes, so it's been
Seconded by your neighbour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's it. Thank you very much. Any other actions from public participation? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sort of a thing on each one, really. I haven't had time to look over the stuff that Gary gave us, but if there is information in there that's wrong, I think it should be put right in the public eye sooner rather than later. And for far as Warren's questions go, I know there's quite a few in the community that are asking the same questions. So they're very valid. Now, as for the fluoridation matter, I had a little bit of a look into some stuff on that, which I'll have a bit of a paper here, which just to give you a basic thought process around it on the right piece of paper. So it is a bit of a worry, and I know there are a lot of the public that are worried about the fluoridation thing because it is a toxic poison. I had a discussion with a guy that used to run a council water plant, and he stated that yes, you have to be in full PPE, masked up, everything, because it is very dangerous. So if it was to come in,
If I could just interrupt and direct you to what is the action you would want the council to take as a result of Helen's submission, please?
could I just give us a little bit of info and then I'll.
Well, I tell you what, how about telling us the action you're looking for?
The action I would like is for us to be fully informed of any upcoming matters to do with our water and fluoridation, to keep the public keep it in the public eye and the public notified of everything.
Were you satisfied with the chief executive's explanation of the situation?
Yeah, Harry gave us a good explanation, but that's not to say that another document's not going to come from government changing it at some stage. That's what
I'm confident that the chief executive would alert us.
Yeah.
I can be confident.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have done so in the past.
Yeah, so that's customer practice.
The information, I look at it from my own personal history as a truck driver. I used to have a dangerous goods license. I've let it lapse now because I don't cart that sort of stuff. So the fluoride, as far as carting it on a truck, you wonder why they would want to put it in your water when you can't even put it on the back of the truck with food items. It's just a simple way to sort of look at how toxic it could be.
Any other actions?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, just a question to the Chief Executive. You said that the Director General has written to us twice. We're not in the first tranche, we're not in the second tranche. Do you know the process if suddenly we were to be on the third tranche, what that process or timeline might look like, just as a reassurance to councillors and the public that it wouldn't just fluoridation wouldn't just happen in our water tomorrow?
So the Primary Act gives the Director General of Health the ability to direct councils to fluoridate their water. There's no discretion on a council to do so. And so it really is up to, I don't have any sense of what the order is and how the Director of Health makes those decisions, but they simply will give us a direction. It's not something that we can contest. But in terms of the request was to provide a submission to the Amendment Act. But the Amendment Act does not raise the question of whether to fluoridate or not. It is simply transferring responsibility from the Director of Health to the DHBs. So even if council chose to submit, there would still be a default. So say they changed the Act and didn't let DHBs do that, the Director of Health still has that responsibility. So it does not change the ability of the Crown or a Crown agent to actually direct council to do so. They require repealing the Primary Act.
Thank you.
I imagine as DHBs no longer exist, we're probably talking about.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Nothing extra from the public submissions. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any chair of a community board or the Murray Standing Committee here who therefore would like to report anything. So we will skip by that part of the agenda, which means we're now coming to the confirmation of the minutes. In your agenda document, the minutes on page 1 to 11 signal that after we have approved the minutes, I will be inviting anybody to ask whether or not they have a matter that arises from them they wish to discuss. So I will move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th December 2022, a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? I do. Councillor Gray. Do I have any discussion, please? In that case, I move that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. Are there any matters arising? There are none. So we now come to reports from the Chief Executive and the staff. And we start, I think, at page 3 for those.
B1.
Oh, sorry, I've shot ahead. Let's, before we get to page 53, go to page 12. And I appreciate the vigilance of my colleagues on the right. Thank you very much. So, recommendations from the Infrastructure and Community Board, and I'll invite the chair of that committee to address us.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our minutes here, we have a recommendation which was discussed at our Infrastructure and Community Services Board meeting last week. And that topic was the lighting of pedestrian crossings across the South Wairarapa. As we had learned from Council Lofters that none of our pedestrian crossings are compliant to the national standard. So as we discussed in our meeting, Council Lofters have proposed a program and prioritised that the pedestrian lighting around the Martinborough Square be addressed first stage or first phase, with funding coming out of the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Also questions about the project that is running in parallel, which was to identify the fault in the underground wiring or underground cabling, which is within the square at the moment. So that work has been identified, and we have asked council officers if they could provide a report, including a report which details that investigative work, but also including in that report details on pricing and availability and installation of the lights around the square. And we've asked for that report to be generated by the 1st of March, this is in a month's time. And the second part of that was to recommend that council, that the implementation of the pedestrian lighting around the Martinborough Square is included, is completed without public consultation. Is that there's no lighting isn't compliant, there is a risk of public safety, and also on account of the amount of feedback which the Martinborough community has provided to Community Board and Council. And then the third issue there is that the recommendation to council not to consult with the Martinborough community, which is consistent with the Martinborough Square management plan, as the management plan is going to be reviewed with a lot of the other council policies and plans which are in process at the moment. So is there any discussion, or sorry, for you, Maris?
Yes, well, we'll start by inviting comment from councillors, and I'll come to officers after that. There is nothing more to add. Oh, there is. Councillor Gray.
The only comment that I would make with this, and I was present for the meeting, so I feel like I'm up with it all. Under our climate change strategy, there specifically in our 10-year action plan, it does identify that one of the KPIs with that is that we should have potential sites identified to install photovoltaic options. Talking specifically about council buildings and other assets such as streetlights. So this has already been identified in council documents. I feel like that adds weight to when we request investigations for solutions where that there should be adequate weighting to solar options.
Thank you. I'll just do a double check through you if I might. Do you think officers sitting behind councillor Gray heard that comment?
Probably not, but I did.
Okay.
Yeah, Stefan did. Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So right, so I think I saw Mr. Corbett, your hand up maybe?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a correction to the funding for this. In the paper which was previously submitted, in the error I had put infrastructure contributions as the funding source. That should be depreciation reserve. And the reason for that is, as I've been informed by my CFO, infrastructure contributions are really to be used for growth. Whereas the more appropriate source of funding for this is for depreciation reserve, which is used for existing assets. So I just didn't want that to be incorrect on the record.
Right. So we cross out
Lots of heads go up.
cross out the word infrastructure and replace it with depreciation.
Hang on.
Yeah, thanks. Well, as always, we are indebted to Councillor Old's Chief Financial Officer.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Corbett, you say that there's a change in the funding source due to the definition between existing and new or growth, but the lighting, particularly here in the square for the pedestrian crossings, does not currently exist. So would we? Oh, we've got hands everywhere. Is that not therefore the definition sits where you originally had it because this is new infrastructure?
Yeah, I thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So I checked with Carol about the appropriate scope of the two different reserves, and I double checked whether new lighting that constitutes a growth spend, a growth investment, and I was told it wasn't, and that this is better categorised as an existing asset that we are dealing with here. I could check again. Unfortunately, Karen's not here to offer her own advice, but I guess the important thing is that the funding is available to progress this, and we may need to just dig a little more into the most appropriate reserve to use.
Thank you. And can I just say to everybody that I thought the last question was definitely a reminder that we all have to be very sharp at these meetings because people are listening. Councillor Wood.
To me, depreciation reserves are to replace existing time expired assets. We don't currently have lights on the square. It is a new asset. It is not a reserve contribution issue. It will be, to me, it comes out of unfunded money. And we can't hide from this. If we need the money to do this on a safety issue, to me, that is in the delegation of Harry to approve unfunded expenditure because it's a safety issue. It's not a depreciation issue. It's not a reserve issue. It's new. This is new. And so it needs new money.
Right, we'll go to Councillor Gray and then Councillor Maynard.
Just to carry this on, the street lights would be new infrastructure, but broadly what we're talking about is improving the safety of the pedestrian crossings, which are an existing infrastructure. So you could argue that you are improving a thing that's already there.
Bring a bit of a long bow.
Councillor Maynard.
Is there, because to me, I think it's very hard. We had our committee meeting and it was to bring it to this table with now what we're being told is incorrect information. So for starters, that's not really, cricket. And then the second thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, because if the depreciation is there, then that funding should be going towards the lot, like the existing electrics that need work. Obviously, that's where the depreciation needs to be going into the underground work, because we already know that that's faulty and that's already there. I think with anything new, it can come from the reserve that we were already advised in the previous papers. That's what I would have thought.
Thank you, councillor Rolls.
So, yes, it took me a little bit by surprise, I must admit, because clearly it was a infrastructure reserve fund that was going to fund this. I think rather than getting a big long debate, we've got a finance committee meeting next week. And I'd like to get some clarity from Karen, her not being here, just on her interpretation, so that we can actually move this forward. But,
thank you, appreciate that. I'll just go right, there was a hand right down the back that's waited a wee while. Right. James, then we'll come up to the. Well, yes, that would be useful because if you can't hear me, I probably can't hear you.
So those infrastructure funds are funded from financial contributions through the Resource Management Act, and they're ring fenced for things like capital works and growth. So where we've got deficiency in our level of service, which to me this sounds like it is, we're not meeting a national standard, that's probably additional capital works and probably covered within the scope or the purpose of which they are taken. So I think that excludes them from being the tool in this instance from my interpretation.
Sorry, what is excluded? Sorry.
So things that are existing deficiencies in levels of service.
Yeah.
For example, it's not, the works to me don't seem to be required because there's more people around.
Yeah.
It's existing deficiencies that probably outside the scope of certainly the reserve.
Right.
Purpose.
Yeah.
So
But that's not, yeah. Yeah, but that's not being suggested.
Yeah. And possibly the infrastructure reserve as well, I would say.
You think it's outside the infrastructure?
Karen's the expert on that.
Yeah.
Karen's the expert, but in terms of.
Yes, I think it's a small problem that Karen's not here, but I think we can still rely on her advice. And we'll now come down to Bradley.
I think the issue is the wording resolution, it's not the resolution. So if the resolution was to read something like the appropriate fund as determined delegated to the CFO and the CE, then it wouldn't matter. I think the issue is it might not be the correct fund under the legislation to take the money from, as long as you're okay for work to be done, then we can figure out which is the appropriate fund.
And indeed, I was about to move the motion exactly to that. So we'll just, since the motion has been moved, that we take out the words depreciation infrastructure reserve fund from the appropriate source. If we could add from the appropriate source.
Can I just
Go from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's easier
Sorry.
to hear.
Yeah, okay. So can we take out those words there? Infrastructure reserve fund.
Take all of it out.
Take all of that out,
Yeah.
please,
Mhm.
and replace it with from the appropriate fund as identified by the CFO and CEO.
Can there be something added then? Because my one concern is that what we have been talking about is funding that is already so available funds.
Yeah.
And I don't want, because this shouldn't be costing more. So if we're talking about something, I want to make sure that this isn't going to be an additional, okay, so for the next annual plan, we're needing to make up funds for this, because that's with the other two reserves, that, the funding's already in reserves now. So whatever that says, we need to make sure that there's not any additional costs.
Nevertheless, I do have confidence in our chief executive and chief financial officer to take that on board. But we're not discussing the motion until we have a seconder. So the motion is to replace infrastructure reserve fund by the appropriate reserve as identified by the chief executive and chief financial officer. Do I have a seconder? I do. Councillor Macaulay. Is there any other comment on that amendment?
So no matter what the funding source is, at the end of the day, we have pressures on all our reserve funds, certainly depreciation fund. And my concern would be that if we use depreciation funding reserve for that, what's going to miss out on perhaps a prioritised scheduled work.
And
that's not an
I
unlike
would
money.
I would expect this to come back to the finance.
Okay, that's fine.
Any further comments? Okay, so we have an amendment that we replace infrastructure reserve fund with the appropriate source as identified by people. We're about to put the motion. All in favour of the amendment, please say aye. Aye.
I need a further amendment.
Yes, that's fine, but we'll do them one at a
No,
time.
no, it's an amendment.
Anybody against the amendment then? Yes, thank you.
Sorry, it's just that it said pedestrian lighting in the other wards to be included in the next land transport plan, which I think is meant to say long-term plan.
Land transport plan.
So what is the land transport plan?
That's NZ2A land transport.
Okay, so that's because they're on the main.
No,
We will get subsidy funding for the next two stages by including it in our work program for our land transport plan.
So okay, cool.
So that's
cool.
So we get subsidy.
So now we come back to the original motion. And we'll just formally go through the formalities of Councillor Elam's. Are you happy to move the motion? Yes. Do we have a seconder? We do. Councillor Plummer. Any further discussion? Okay. So there are three proposals there. The last one is important from a legal point of view, in that sometimes you set up rules for yourself, which subsequently you decide you have to break for good reasons. And generally speaking, you are allowed to do that as long as you openly acknowledge the fact that you knew there was a rule that you are breaking. And that's basically what that recommendation 3. So all in favour of the 3 recommendations, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Is there anything else from the report from the committee that you wish to add, Councillor Elams?
Oh, I'd just like to thank the officers for the work on the report that they provided, and thank the Infrastructure and Community Services Committee last week for the discussion that we had and moving that these recommendations come over today.
Thank you very much. And yes, please.
Yes, I'd just like to make thank to the staff for all the work they did on this and the various committees and Aidan. And but just to say that there was amazing response around those square coffee times the last few days about the newspaper articles and the possibilities of having some lights. There's a lot of positive kudos gone out there for the council staff. Well deserved.
I think one of the things we possibly have learned from the last 20 minutes is that very, very few recommendation or papers should be going either to the committee or to the council until they've had a review by the Chief Financial Officer. So that's usually the case. Yeah. So they do. We need to be assured. But I know people have been unwell recently and not leave to one thing and another. Now, look, we've been here for an hour. There've been some very astute and sharp observations and questions made. Would you like 5 minutes just to refuel? We'll come back in 5 minutes.